Welcome to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge, your front row seat to the boldest ideas and smartest strategies in the marketing game. Your host is Reed Hansen, Chief Growth Officer at MarketSurge.
Hello and welcome to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge, your front row seat to the boldest business insights, marketing breakthroughs, and entrepreneurial real talk. I'm your host, Reed Hansen, and I'm the Chief Growth Officer at MarketSurge, where we turn tools into systems and systems into growth. Each week, we cut through the fluff to bring you tactics, tech, and takeaways you need to scale smarter, faster, and even louder. Today's guest is Jesse Gilmore, founder of Niche in Control and a seasoned agency scaling strategist. Jesse built his reputation helping service-based businesses break free from the success trap by architecting bulletproof systems so you can step out of the day-to-day and truly lead as a CEO. He's guided dozens of agencies to double-digit growth without burning out their teams, and he's here to share his must-have tech stack, the metrics that matter, and which fictional hero best embodies his approach to business. Get ready for a masterclass turning chaos into control. And Jesse, I'm really glad to have you on the show. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Reed. That's awesome. Thank you for the intro.
Yeah, you bet. Well, so let's just jump right in. Jesse, I did like the statement I saw in a few places. You mentioned breaking free from the trap of success. So now you work with agency owners. Can you walk us through the moment you realized you needed to build systems and how that insight led you to create Niche in Control?
Yeah, absolutely. So Niche in Control is actually my fourth business. My first three became successful from the outside, but the inside, I was working 80-hour weeks for years and led towards burnout, and I actually dissolved three businesses, not really understanding systems and not really understanding what exponential growth can actually be. The whole business was based around my skills, so if I didn't work didn't get done. And it wasn't until I started learning systems in corporate that I started to understand a bit more about duplication of people. I was a corporate, so in corporate, I worked in a $4 billion global corporation, and my sole mission was to remove what's called single points of failure. And if any one of these terms you want to dive deeper into, we can definitely do that. But over the 5 years, I built these systems to basically make it to where in the corporation, people could switch who's doing the work, but the customer wasn't impacted. And the interesting thing about the corporate work that I did was it was basically the solution to my previous businesses. And so it wasn't actually until the systems that we had built in corporate led towards a business acquisition that I started realizing, hey, actually, I have something here, and I really wish I would have known that in my previous businesses. And so I developed a method that basically does that thing for entrepreneurs. And it wasn't until I started working with agency owners that I realized they got the best results, and basically made a whole business based around helping marketing agency owners be able to scale. And I give that context because breaking free of the trap of success is where you kind of have like the growth that everybody is talking about. Like you hit the 30,000 a month, or you hit the 100,000, or whatever the thing is, but you feel less fulfilled. You're working too much. You're not able to spend time with the family. You start sacrificing different parts of your life for that business to succeed. And in the end, from my own personal experience, and I'm realizing it the more that I tell this story, the more people are like, actually, I'm there. There needs to be a path out of that breaking free. You can still succeed, but not at the sacrifice of you.
I love it. Now, people that have tuned into this podcast know that I too am an agency owner, and I'd love to hear this. And so selfishly, I am maybe asking a few questions just so I can learn and do better with my own agency. So, fantastic. I am paying very close attention. Tell me a little bit why, you said something interesting, why agency owners, your approach is more effective for agency owners. I'm curious.
Mm-hmm. So in the way beginning of Niche in Control, ironically, I did not have a niche. So I think everybody would laugh at my first website. It was like coaching and consulting to grow your business. It wasn't until I started to work with different types of companies that I worked with a B2C SaaS company and helped them with systems. And then I helped with a copywriter. And it was funny with a copywriter, I was like, how long does this process usually take? And they're like 3 weeks. And I was like, if you move this over here, it'll actually be a lot less. And he's like, I can now do that in a week. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And it wasn't until I started working with a digital marketing agency owner, Warren, that I applied a whole method to the work together. And what he was able to do was go from 15,000 per month with him, his partner, and another employee, all the way up to 100,000 per month in 9 months. And that is a crazy amount of growth. And what's really interesting about that was that he didn't really need to understand marketing. I'm not there to teach, like Reed, if you were a client of mine, I'm not going to teach you to be a better SME or subject matter expert in the agency, but I can definitely teach you on how to be a better entrepreneur, where you're building systems and people and hiring and empowerment to make it to where you're not like stuck in the same way that I was in the first businesses. And what I found is that agency owners, because it's kind of like the yin and the yang, if you are a marketing agency owner, you understand creativity, you understand growth, you understand metrics, you understand positioning and messaging and all the kind of stuff that I can kind of help with, but I'm not like the greatest at. And you need like the other sides, like the yin to the yang, where it's like the systems and the logic and the pattern recognition and the team growth and the HR. So when you think about the reason why agency owners get good results from me is not because I own an agency. I don't own an agency. My whole business is actually based around not an agency and teaching agency owners how to become better entrepreneurs. So results were the thing that actually led us to be focused on the niche.
Interesting. So I want to drill in a little bit too. Obviously, it's in the name of your business, the niche and control, and you've referenced that, finding your own niche. Now, it sounds like that's really important. Why is that important to have a niche? I go back and forth between saying niche and niche. So forgive me if I mispronounce. But what's behind that?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I say niche, but some people say niche, and it's okay.
I don't know
Either way. Yeah. But basically, for anybody that might not even know what that word is, a niche is basically where you start to focus or specialize in targeting a certain group of people. And when we think about niches, my suggestion is that you look at it from different layers. The more niched you become, there's pros and cons to each one, but as you become more niched or more focused on a certain group of people, or maybe even a certain problem that you solve, it cuts through the noise. So for an example, if I use the words, one of my clients was spinning her wheels in her agency. That one word, spinning your wheels, is a thing that agency owners use all the time with like word choice, right? And when we think about niches, if you're a generalist agency right now, you are being hit really, really hard by AI. And I was re-listening to your AI talk a little bit ago. And it's because of this whole generalist. If you serve everyone, you actually serve no one. And your marketing message is really to the average person as opposed to somebody very specific. And what's really interesting about niches is the more specific that you get, the more it cuts through the noise of all the kind of like general stuff that's going on. And what's really interesting is you can become a specialist or an expert in a very small group of people and just be the best at it in a very short period of time when you're not like spread a million different ways. So I think that the niche itself has been always a much needed thing for scale and growth. And we can talk about the science of growth and minimizing variables and all that kind of stuff. But I think that the niche is actually more important now than it ever has been for the reasons that were probably in your previous episode about AI and its disruption.
I love it. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I have found, and Jesse, this is our first conversation. So I, just by way of background, I'm relatively new to the agency world. I bought the MarketSurge agency a little over a year ago, and we have gone through a process of, not necessarily by design, but the large body of our clients were photographers, and so by default we're specialists in that niche. And when we started growing, and really emphasizing adding new clients, we were seeking additional niches to build in. And so but it's been an interesting exercise. But we've had to be kind of deliberate. We've had a few like false starts, like go down the path on one niche, it's not really a good fit, and then try another. And but our focus efforts have been much better than just kind of like a general, like, hey, we do marketing. That just isn't. So let's talk a little bit about tech. Do you go as far as designing processes with tech in mind, or like, are there tech platforms that you really like that you recommend for your agency owner clients?
It's funny because this question has been asked in previous podcasts, and I don't think that the podcast person before liked my answer. But,
no judgment here.
So in actuality, I am software or platform agnostic.
Okay.
And the reason being is that I'm more focused around effectiveness. And what I want to make sure before we even get into software and like certain types of tech or even automation or AI agents or whatever, is if you have processes right now that are in your head and you're thinking about AI agents, it doesn't work. You have to go through a series. And I was literally just talking in my mastermind 2 hours ago about this very specific thing. So it's very timely. But when we think about tech, the tech really has to fit whatever is effective and gets you results. And when you think about processes, the processes themselves, when you're building SOPs or building operational systems, if you don't necessarily have a clear process mapped out that's effective, start there. And then from there, determining if it's effective, then you can go into software systems or so forth. And what you're looking for in the software is to just basically make it easier and faster and more effective to be able to do that certain process. So I have a more of like an inside out approach to growth and so forth. And for anybody that's looking at like what type of tech to use, there's a thing called a requirements matrix, and there's like a systematic way of actually looking at softwares based around your priority and features and so forth. So I would go through a very systematic process, but that might be my corporate background talking. So.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that's illustrative of your approach. Are there certain categories that you recommend a marketing agency have? So, an example might be project management software. Is that something that you see as essential? And maybe like if you had a couple other large bucket areas, that might be helpful to look through.
Yeah, absolutely. So CRM, absolutely necessary for pipeline and so forth. I've used many different ones. If you're going after sales and like you want to have a really good one for specifically prospecting and sales, Close CRM is a really good one. I've used it for years. We're just switching out of that to an all-in-one for our own self. Project management systems is necessary, but you build the processes first because it gives you the outline for what you'd actually put into a template or a client folder within a project management system. So a lot of people rush towards the system. Again, not focused on the process and effectiveness. Focus on the process first and then move it into the system. Project management systems can be a range of complexity. In the way beginning, if you're just trying to figure out task management, you have a small team, something as simple as Trello is totally fine. If you're looking for more automations and kind of things, ClickUp is good. I haven't gone so far into the agile side of like Jira and whatever. Depends on what type of agency it actually is.
Yeah, I'm not trying to push it towards specifics. I think that's helpful to, like CRM, project management, like those are definitely essentials. But yeah, anything else, any other big bucket categories or that come
Absolutely.
to mind?
Yeah, so once you capture the processes and you've started mapping it out in project management systems, typically you use something low fidelity like a Google Doc or whatever. But eventually you get to a place where revision and document management becomes kind of like a needed thing. So a knowledge management system like Help Scout or a couple other different softwares like that will be beneficial. And you link the knowledge management system with your project management system, which makes it a lot easier for you to assign work and people know exactly what to do right from the get-go. When I think about other systems, I would also look at, if you already have the sales system with a CRM, you're going to want to look at some way of generating leads in some form. So a marketing system, depending on what platform you're using, I instruct a lot of clients to use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really beneficial for new connections and cutting through gatekeepers and so forth. LinkedIn's really hard on automations right now, which makes a lot of sense, but any way of generating the interest from a prospecting side would be good. There's probably more systems, but those are kind of like the ops side and then sales and marketing side.
No, that's awesome. And I did touch on the SOPs that I thought was really important. Obviously, it's really important to document. If you're going to have a process, it needs to be documented. How frequently are you, I guess, how widespread of a problem is it that processes are not documented or documented well? I mean, I imagine that's probably enough to build a whole practice on.
Yeah, if that was the only thing that we focused on with agencies, we would have a line out the door, But yeah, I think SOPs. I think one of the illustrations that I'd have you consider, I kind of talk in parables and stories a lot to kind of get like a visual. So when you think about SOPs are kind of like the leaves off of a branch. When you think about a business management system, which is ultimately what you're trying to create, okay? A business management system is a system that lives without you, right? And so if you, the founder, are creating this business management system, that basically houses everything. And then it's the connection between CRM and your project management system, everything else we were talking about, and the people working within it. When you think about that, the business management system is the trunk of a tree. Okay, it's like the unmovable parts, the same things that don't really move, right? And even in there, you could have like policies of the organization, depending on how big you are. Then from there, you start going into the branches of that. And the branches are your process workflows. So a visual workflow of your client onboarding process, a visual workflow of whatever it is, And from there, those branches, eventually from the process workflow, each individual process should have its own SOP or like a standard, right? So it's the branches of that. A lot of people focus on SOPs first. And the problem with it is that when you build systems, if you don't have a definition of done, it's like forever. It's like you just like get stuck in this void of like, how many SOPs am I going to create? And there's no organizational structure and it just sucks. Okay. It's coming from an ops guy, And so what I instruct all clients to do, and what I would suggest for anybody that is a marketing agency owner and you're trying to build systems and you've just been building a bunch of SOPs, I take 2 steps back and I start looking at all the different services that you offer and all the different kind of roles within your organization currently. And just do this like big brain dump of all the crap that you actually do, right? And then from there go, okay, when's the beginning and end of each one of these? What's the beginning and end of a client onboarding? When's the beginning and end of a setup of a campaign, right? And then from there, brainstorm the list of all the different things that happen in there. And those are your processes. Make it visual and make sure that's good before you start building a bunch of SOPs. And every one of those processes can be an SOP, and then you have a definition of done. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I'd love to hear somebody like an ops expert describe that. It's something we've attempted to do, and we have a few SOPs in place describing successful processes, but there's just a lot we don't. And and I think there's an opportunity to make our existing ones better. And I'm hearing a lot of this and I'm like, I've got a lot of things I need to do for my agency. So this has been great for me. Now let's change gears a little bit. And I'd like to have a little fun with this. And, I think we have a pretty good understanding of like your mindset, but to help people visualize, you said you're a storyteller and you like allegory, and what would you say is like a fictional character or, whether it's from a movie or a book or some sort of depiction in media that would really describe your approach or your role, your career? How would you use that imagery?
Sure. Yeah. What's funny is that I was thinking about this question when you did it in the intro at the fictional part. And the only thing that comes to mind is Yoda. Now, I'm not saying I'm like some Jedi master, whatever, but it's more so like just my approach. Because, after building systems for 11 years, half in corporate, half in niche and control, and then also looking at the decade in entrepreneurship where I failed numerous times, right? There's a lot of like learning through failure or through experience that I seem to guide, more of a guide than I am like, some superhero. Like I would never say that I'm like Superman, I'm a lot more of like, hey, Reed, you took over the company a year ago. Here's a couple of things for you to think about. And then from there, what do you think is the highest priority and so forth? And really way more of like the guiding kind of person as opposed to like the hero. And I think of all of my clients as like the Luke Skywalker, and you're like learning different skills and you're learning how to use a lightsaber and use the force, which
Yeah.
might just be like intention and vision, so yeah.
No, I mean, that's a great description. And, I think, really empowering your clients or students, to be powerful on their own is really effective. Obviously a lot of us are in business doing the work for clients, and probably wish we did more teaching or more enabling like that. That's great.
Reed, is it okay if I dive into a
Yeah,
model real quick just to kind of paint this?
please. That would be great.
Okay.
Yes.
So we've gone through 6 versions of what's called leverage for growth, and I could talk more about that. But for you guys, I wrote a book, The Agency Owner's Guide to Freedom. I'll give Reed the link so you guys can get a free copy of that. But what I found is that typically there are 5 main stages, and this is not in the book, but 5 main stages that you're going through. And if you understand that as an agency owner that's trying to grow to a place where you're more of a visionary, you work in the business when you want to, you can scale it or you could sell it, you could do all those kinds of things. The pathway is always the same. And it's interesting, I had a conversation earlier this week about valuation, and one of our newer strategic partners is a M&A person, specifically for agencies. And I talked about this, and they're like, oh my God, it's like, that's how the valuation goes up. And I was like, exactly, right? But typically what happens is that you start off a marketing agency being the subject matter expert, right? You don't have a large team doing all the work. You're usually the person who's doing it, and you might be good at SEO or ads or whatever. And so the first stage of your business is you're a subject matter expert. And the second stage is where you turn into a trainer, okay? And the only way to actually do that is to build out the systems and the SOPs and be able to make it to where you have assets to train somebody effectively, okay? Now, the mindset, the tools, the tactics, the skills that go from subject matter expert to trainer are different. And this is the reason why we talk about transformation all the time. I'm not a transactional coach. I'm a transformational coach because I'm focused on the transformation. Going from subject matter expert to trainer requires different skills, abilities, all that kind of stuff. From trainer, the next stage, once you start training people and they're starting to do pretty good, is manager, okay? That's a different skill, trade, tactic, everything. Systems need to be developed for management. Otherwise, you get sucked back into either doing the work or being a trainer, right? And eventually, you get to a place where you're managing trainers. And once you get into management, you're just running the business. You're not leading it, you're just running it. And you get to a certain place where the management becomes something that somebody else takes over because you built enough systems. You move into the next stage, which is leadership. Leadership is fundamentally different than management. Management is running day to day. It's more focused around the how and the when, where the leader is more focused around the what and the why. And when you can have a place where you're developing your leadership, what's interesting is that you have to take more time away from the business. And it's fundamentally different from a lot of people's mindset of leadership and leading an organization and so forth. When you step into leadership, you get to a place where eventually you start having leaders underneath you, and you develop leaders, which means that you move into visionary. So it goes from subject matter expert to trainer to manager to leader to visionary. And what's interesting is if you listen to me and Reed talk about this, which we're probably going to dive deeper into, and you find yourself in one of these stages, you know exactly what you need to do. If you're a subject matter expert, you need to become a better trainer. If you're a trainer right now, you need to become a better manager. If you're a manager right now, you become a better leader. If you're a leader right now, you need to focus on vision. It's like it gives you a path, and at least from a really high level. And then when it comes into tactics, that's why you get coaching. So,
No, I love it. One thing that I was thinking of as you were describing that is, what would you advise somebody in an agency role that's a SME, subject matter expert, and they love what they do? They pick anything in an agency, but they love SEO, and that's that keeps them going, and they love less leading people. Obviously it's essential to grow. You need that kind of development. What do you advise for people in that situation? They just I just really want to do more SEO tasks, or I really want to, I just want to design web pages all the time or something. How would you talk them through that?
Entrepreneurship and expanding an agency or an organization to the nth degree that is possible is a path for some people. Okay. Your definition of success has to be defined internally, not externally, meaning all the marketing messages that are out there that are saying you need a 7-figure agency in order for you to feel freedom is bullshit. I'm sorry if I swear. But
It's a family podcast, lots of
I'll hold back. But it is extremely important for you to create your own definition of success. And if that definition of success is that you have an agency that allows you to focus on the things that you like to do with clients the most, and everything else is to allow that to happen, that is what's called a centralized business model. Just know you'll get to a certain place where you can't scale it beyond a certain point, right? Like just naturally, unless you hire a CEO that does all the other stuff and you're like a part of the organization being that subject matter expert, which might be a path for you. One of the things that we do with clients is we get them to understand what's called a unique ability. Unique ability is actually a term from Dan Sullivan where he talks about, who are you innately meant to be? If you were a client of ours and you would go through the unique ability, you're filling out a bunch of different assessments. You're getting to understand the commonality between maybe like a Colbier and a StrengthsFinder and a Myers-Briggs and an Ocean and whatever else. And that commonality basically paints a picture of how we should position you. So if we can position you according to your strengths, you feel more fulfilled. You might not have to do as much work. And if that thing is based around the building of the websites, then you might have to hire somebody else that does the growth side, right? But most likely, if you've been in business for a longer period of time, you eventually hate parts of the work. Like building the websites, there's parts of that you don't really want to do. And maybe the role is more of a senior website builder, and then the junior people are working underneath you. That's still a growth piece, right? So it really depends. Like you're going to have to prioritize as an entrepreneur. What is the most important priority for you? Is it ultimate expansion, or is it doing exactly what you love within the organization? And you might get to a place where you just want to have the choice. And everything that I'm talking about right now gives you that choice.
Yeah, no, I love it. I deal with a lot of in the small and medium-sized business space. So, I don't necessarily have clients that are agency owners themselves, but I picked up on a thread of something you were describing that I think is useful. And just that like sometimes like creatives or like skilled technicians of some sort, they just don't want to let go. Like they're really good at what they do and they just can't envision handing that off. And but I think that is a great way to visualize that, and potentially you hire a CEO, that's a potential path. No, I love it. So Jesse, I'd be interested in a little bit about your like personal like productivity hacks. Like how do you keep yourself busy and engaged and maximizing your time? As an expert in this field, like how do you do it personally? What do you prioritize?
Yeah. So. One of the coaches that I had taught me a thing that he calls the core four, and it's called body, being, balance, business. Are you familiar with this, Reed?
I'm not, no.
Okay. So it's through Wake Up Warrior, and what it is this understanding that in order for you to have abundance in each part of your life, body, being, balance, and business, right? Then what you need to do is you need to do these things called daily deposits, where you do daily deposits in each one of the categories, and over a longer period of time, you grow in it. So I have embodied this method since 2018. So at the time of this recording, it's 2025. So for the last 7 years, what I've done every morning, not always like without fail, but every morning, what I'll do is I'll start working through this. So I'll wake up at about 5:30 in the morning. Usually before my kids. I have 3 kids. So that in itself is its own kind of thing. But I wake up in the morning and I'll start going through it. And the first thing I'll do is I'll meditate for at least 10 minutes. Then I'll go into journaling. It's also a thing called stacking, which is basically a systematic way of doing journals. And what I'll do is I'll ask a question and I'll just sit until I feel like an answer, and then I'll write it down. And I just do that over and over and over again until I'm like empty, right? And then from there, typically I need to move my body. And so I'll go for a run. There's a bunch of random, like, wherever these things are, medals, medals right behind me of like a marathon. So before doing Wake Up Warrior, I wasn't really a marathon person, but now I am. And what I'll do is I'll go for a run. And the question is did I sweat today? I'll come back from that and I'll drink a green smoothie. And then right after that, I'll spend time with my kids and my wife, and I'll get breakfast ready and I'll kind of get ready. And then sometimes on my run, what I'll do is I'll listen to either a book or something business oriented that I'm trying to learn. And then if it is something that I want to pass on to my mastermind group, I'll record a video and I'll share it with them. But I'm doing that all before my 9 o'clock start time. And what happens is that morning routine gives me so much confidence and certainty in the things that I'm saying and how I show up, and for my family and for myself, as well as my clients, that I never really feel like I'm in a place of lack, which is ultimately the key to being a coach in the midst of serving people that are getting disrupted, right? Mm-hmm. You have to stay consistent, and you have to stay with that. I start at 9 o'clock. I get done by 4:30. If I'm not upstairs where my wife and kids are by 5 o'clock, she gets really pissed, which is perfect because then it keeps me in kind of like a realm. The rest of the day, I'm just focused on the family until they go to sleep. Then I'll read and I'll go to sleep. And I always have that start time at 5:30, and it doesn't change on weekends either. There's a lot of reasons on why that is, but it keeps that consistency. So that's a typical day.
That's awesome. I don't know that often I have these podcasts with guests and I feel energized and inspired. And I definitely do feel that is the case talking to you. And, really,
Awesome.
really, I think that's great, all you're doing. Years ago, I used to run marathons. And I'm actually, funny enough, the last couple of weeks I've started running again. Definitely need new shoes and new knees
ASICs.
and hips.
That's right.
And actually, I do ASICs as well. I'm a Kayano guy. So,
yeah, me too.
yeah,
This is funny.
small world.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'll just give you a little product tip. This hat I'm wearing, it's alter ego. So I'm a balding gentleman, and I have had issues with sweat coming down into my face and into my ears for buds. And these hats, this alter ego brand, has been really cool. I'd recommend it. It's we also have this weird quirk. Sorry, total aside, but I live near Lake Michigan here, and there's this species of birds, this blackbird with these red spots on their wings, and they attack bald heads, and they just like, and so like around here, you have to do this for defense. Sorry, total aside, but just
Dude, I gotta get it. No, I bet you're the most stylish person running.
There's a wide range. Absolutely. I guess I do my best in my middle age now, but, so Jesse, let's, I think, I'll ask you one last question. Sure. And maybe I'll go back to kind of the, little off topic questions, but what are some of you say green smoothie, are there other snacks or drinks or other things you keep around yourself during the workday, things that help you be more productive? Foods or drinks?
Yeah, I've never really thought of, well, other than coffee. I've gotten rid of a lot of addictions like alcohol and TV and whatever else. But I think one thing I can never get rid of is coffee. I'm like, I'm a coffee drinker. I actually had like a mocha right before this, so maybe that's the reason why I'm talking faster.
No, you're great.
But yeah, and then in the afternoon, typically I'll have like a sparkling water. That's kind of like my thing. It's a Trader Joe's. You had asked if it was LaCroix, but yeah, just sparkling water. Nothing that crazy. I'll typically have like something before lunch that kind of keeps me energized, but that's about it.
Awesome. Well, I think there's just been a wealth of great advice and tips. And I think that this speaks to just your wealth of wisdom that would be particularly applicable to any agency owners in the audience. Now, if somebody's interested in working with you or reading your book, like learning more about getting their agency in shape and themselves more CEO-like, how can they find you?
Yeah, totally. So I'm extremely active on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Jesse P. Gilmore. I post 5 days a week and you get an inside glimpse into my world with that. But I think if you're considering anything niche and control oriented, just go to nicheincontrol.com. We have a wealth of different case studies. A lot of our case studies are about 20 minutes long, where people are talking about what happened before, during, and after working together and the transformations there. So all the social proof is there. If you are somebody who wants a copy of the book, I basically took the method from 2023. And granted, we've gone through 2 different versions of it since then, but still like 98% is the same. If you want a free book, you can go to nicheincontrol.com/free-book. And I'll give you all these links, Reed, so you can put it in the show notes. I'll give you a digital file, and you can also find it on Amazon for $10. But last but not least, if anybody is interested in experiencing me as a coach without paying for me yet, we have monthly master classes where I do a deep dive. And actually, I would suggest that you check it out as well. It's a 1-day, 3-hour intensive. It's called the Profit Playbook. And the next one is in July 29th. But you can go to events.nicheandcontrol.com. It's an evergreen link. So as the next event comes, it goes right there. And that's where I dive deeper into it. I'm way more of a coach than I am a salesperson. So
awesome.
Get to experience me as a coach.
Well, Jesse, it has been a real pleasure. I am so glad we connected. I've learned a lot, and I think you provided a ton of value for this audience of small and medium-sized business owners and coaches and consultants. I do think that there is just a lot there in what you preach and teach. So this has been a real pleasure. Thanks so much, Jesse.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Want to stay ahead of what's actually working in marketing right now? Head over to MarketSurge.io and see how we're helping businesses grow smarter, faster, and louder. That's MarketSurge.io, because your next breakthrough shouldn't be a guess.